All right, this is my Sunday rant. I've got a couple of things that have been bugging me today. Yesterday in my video, I talked about DSLRs being dead. I'm going to save that for a second. The rant, this has been bugging me for a long time, but it wasn't until I sat down to watch a bit of TV. I just had lunch and I was watching a new video by Tony Northrup. Let me bring it up here because it's a really well done video. Tony makes some really good stuff. How do I switch? Here we go. So let me find Tony's video. And it's this one here. Now I'm going to silence that. Thanks for the ad. That's not when I need an ad. So in this video here, Tony's talking about 4K, and he said that 4 years ago they decided to move to 4K. And the reason they moved to 4K because they figured, you know what, in 4 years, in 5 years, whatever time, we're going to be embarrassed by the content that we're producing today. We're going to be embarrassed by 1080p. So they bought a lot of equipment. They probably spent $10,000 worth on equipment, new cameras, new computers. And 4K does take some new hardware. I mean, you're going to need new cameras, you're going to need new computers. It's going to take up a lot more file size. But they switched their entire channel over to 4K. Now, yesterday I received a comment also from somebody saying, dude, you should be producing in 4K. It looks like you're shooting with a 10-year-old camera. And I'm shooting with the 70D. So there's not a lot of detail there, but he said, you should be in 4K. And I completely disagree. Output, your output, your projects should be in 1080p. Most of the people watching on YouTube are watching on a smaller screen. You cannot, there's no possible way you can see the detail, assuming that the camera can actually display 4K. You're not going to see it. You really aren't. I know. So you produce it for your 52-inch TV or whatever size TV you've got. Most of us aren't sitting 2 or 3 feet away from it unless we're gaming. Most of us are sitting at least 8 feet in front of that TV. We cannot see the difference in most cases. Now, I got to comment on this too. This is the important part. If you're shooting really high detailed 1080p, so for example, if you're shooting on like a Canon C200 or something, anything where you can shoot full wide on a 4K sensor and downsample it to 1080p, you're going to get really good detail. And if you look at a 1080p video that's shot with that level of detail, and then you compare it to 4K, optically, you're not going to be able to see the difference. So why go through all that trouble? Unfortunately, my camera right now that I do my YouTube videos on is a 70D, so it's limited to 1080p 30 frames per second as the max resolution that it will support. But I am going to be upgrading. That's probably going to happen sometime in the next 6 months when I see my perfect camera coming out. I don't know when that's going to be. But I am going to be getting a 4K camera, and it's going to be able to produce detailed 4K camera, but it must have, and again, Tony harped on this, but I'll say this again, I'm a one-man shop. I need reliable, trustworthy autofocus. It doesn't matter what your camera can do. If you're a one-person show and you're not shooting manual, you need reliable, trustworthy autofocus. And my 70D, I leave it on auto the whole time. I'm able to get really good results in 2 months of shooting, 2.5 months of shooting. I have yet to once lose focus. So reliable autofocus is important. So shooting 4K, not all the time. But if I'm outside doing run and gun work, I'm shooting my son, he's out playing in the backyard, I'll shoot wide, I'll shoot 4K. But now what 4K allows me to do in post is I can crop in and create the illusion of multiple different camera angles. So imagine this is a 4K frame size here. Now if I'm doing a 1080p project, I'm not used to looking in a mirror here, you've basically got 1/4 of this space. So now I can punch in to anywhere within that space by a factor of 2. And it's going to look awesome because my final output is 1080p. I can also create pans without having rolling shutter. So if you're outside and you're thinking, I need a panning scene here, but my camera, my full frame sensor isn't going to allow me to pan without rolling shutter, shoot wide. And then in post, you can pan from one side to the other and you'll have absolutely zero rolling shutter. 4K is powerful in that regard. But if you don't need those effects, if you don't need those capabilities, so simulating multiple camera angles, getting that really high detailed 1080p, what are you doing shooting in 4K? So that's the biggest problem I have with 4K. And I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. So far, no comments have come in. Do you think we need 4K? Do you shoot in 4K? Do you want 4K? Why do you want 4K? Because TVs are 4K? Because phones are supporting 4K? Why do you want 4K? Or do you? Do you believe, as I do, that you don't need to produce in 4K? And if you don't produce in 4K, then you're saving a lot on storage space. But you are going to have to upgrade your computer, because if you're going to use 4K coming in, well, you could work with proxy files. That is true. But I really like I like WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. So I decided to upgrade my computer to handle hardware hardware decoding of H.265. So I can bring in 4K video, no problem. I can actually bring in 6K video on this computer and not have to put it in proxy and apply effects, no problem. But I've kitted out this computer so it's going to last me 5-6 years. It's not cheap to get a computer that has that much power. So I definitely have a big problem with people saying, yes, you have to output in 4K. And I don't plan on doing it. As I get better at as producing my YouTube channel, I am not going to output in 4K. This YouTube stream is, now this is just using the web camera. As you can tell, this is not exactly a professional setting. This is my second attempt, and hopefully you guys can comment, let me know, but I think my audio is fixed in this one. In the first one, my audio was absolutely terrible, but looking at my mixer here, it shows that I'm not going over -2 dB, or I'm not going over -6 dB, so that should be pretty good. The other thing I want to bring up is DSLRs. DSLRs are not dead. This is a major, I'm going to go off on a major rant here. I've seen several high-profile YouTubers. I've seen it in magazines. I've seen it on forums like DP Review, where people are saying the DSLR is dead. Now, I don't know what universe they live in, but it isn't dead. There are still lots of tubers shooting with Canon 80Ds and 70Ds, 5D Mark IVs, and their DSLRs. Also, a lot of professionals are still using their DSLRs. Over decades, over years, they've built up a large inventory of lenses that cost them thousands of dollars. They have no reason to get rid of those lenses. Why go to mirrorless? Why do I go mirrorless? Smaller size? No, that's silly. They're not smaller. The camera body might be lighter and smaller, but once you put the lens on it and everything, you're not getting any benefit from size there. Yes, you can develop different types of lenses, but for these people who are out producing professional work, the 7200 they've got, the 104, or the 35 millimeter, the 80 millimeter, 100 millimeter, whatever it is they're using, there's no big need for them to get something else. They've got really good lenses. So if their body dies, what do? Well, they want to get another body that'll work with that lens. Go out, get it, bring it in. So if you had like a Nikon D750, and your camera was acting up, you'd go out and buy another Nikon D750, or if that's gone, now you go out and buy yourself a D780. I don't need to have to rethink, relearn. The lenses work perfectly fine. So you've got a huge market of professionals. And the people who shoot professionally more than exceed the amount of YouTubers that are producing videos. And the perfect camera for a YouTuber is very different from a professional videographer or photographer. A GH5 is a perfect camera for YouTubing. Manually lock the focus, set everything up, and you're going to get incredible results. You can use a 5D Mark IV, you can use the EOS R, you can use a Fuji X-T3. A lot of cameras will work that way, but professionals, they've got their gear, they've got their Canon 1DX Mark III, they've got their Nikon D5, they've got their, and the list goes on of the cameras that these guys are using. It's not dead to them. So saying that DSLRs are dead, I think is a kind of a cheap way to get clicks. I know. So I'm saying that they're not dead as a way to get clicks, but this is how I'm inspired to produce content. This is what's bugging me about some of the content out there by just saying that DSLRs are dead and making out that you have to go to the mirrorless. Now, there are people, and I have been in that camp sometimes myself, where a new technology comes out and you want to be the first to get that technology. But in mirrorless, I think that works against most early adopters, because you jump to a new platform, guess what they do not have? A wide depth or wide inventory, a deep inventory of lenses. Now, the Canon EOS RP, or the R, no, the R and then the RP and then the RF platform, that actual platform, they did something right. And Nikon's done a similar thing, but basically giving away an adapter that allows you to take all EF lenses and put it on there. So if you do move to the platform, even though there aren't a ton of lenses, you can use really good high quality lenses. Forget trying to put EF lenses on there. You're moving into a different environment. Full frame, it's different. If you try to slap an EFS lens onto an RF platform, it's not going to give you the same results you're looking for. So I'm probably going to end this channel in about 10 minutes unless I get any comments on coming back from you guys. But I'm really curious. What do you guys think? Are DSLRs dead? Is 4K important? Do we need 4K? Can we just shoot in 4K? I personally believe that you should shoot in 4K when it can really help you. Remember, focus on the capabilities. Focus on the outcomes. If you would really love to create multiple camera angles but only shoot it once, I mean, just think about that. Sometimes with my son, let's say he's skiing down a hill and I want to get him from different camera angles or different focal lengths, I have to set up and reshoot. Now, if I'm shooting 4K and he's coming down the hill, now in post-production I can simulate multiple camera angles. If I'm using a 1080p project, that is far more valuable. Now maybe he only has to come down the hill in that same place twice or once, whereas before it'd be 6 or 12 different times. That is really huge. That is very beneficial. While it's only a factor of 2, you've got 4 times the amount of information in that 4K frame for a 1080p project. That's just really, really awesome. And again, the panning effects, to pan from left to right or right to left or even up and down, you've got a huge amount of space to work with that you don't have to worry about rolling shutter. And that is very, very valuable. So those are my 2 biggest peeves for today. Just really, really frustrated with people saying that DSLRs are dead and this push that you have to produce content in 4K. One of my commenters said, I'd rather see boring content in sharp detail. Well, what are you watching this content on? Your smartphone? Are you watching this on a really large TV and you're really up close? I bought an LG television probably about a year ago, and this was a really good $2,000 set, so it wasn't a low end. The colors were incredible. Where you really notice the difference is if it was streaming credits and they were white and they were really small, everywhere around the credit was just completely black. There was no bleed over from one pixel to another. And the very first movie I watched, actually, no, that's not true. I did watch a lot of YouTube content 4K, and there's a lot of good stuff, but the best stuff you find is the stuff where they're trying to sell you on the TV. So the movie I watched on this television was Ghost in the Machine. And it was brilliant on a 4K set, on a really good quality 4K set. It looked really good. But since then, whether it's been YouTube, whether it's been Netflix, whatever the source, I'll be looking at the TV thinking, is that 4K? That looks really, really good. Get up close to the TV, pixel peek, I go, yeah, that looks really good. And I press the button to see, nope, that's 1080p. And so as a filmmaker, I'm learning that it's more about the capabilities and less on the specifications, because even a camera that says it can shoot 4K doesn't mean it's going to do a very, very good job of it. Look at EOS R and RP. They have soft 4K. Well, yeah, it's got 4K, but I'm no longer interested in that, because now my ability to punch in to simulate multiple camera angles, what's going to happen is as I do that, that video is going to appear softer. Same with the Canon 90D. The Canon 90D has 4K. but it's soft 4K. And there's a lot of videos that you can see on YouTube where they show you how incredibly detailed 1080p is. So they shoot in 4K and then they downsample it to 1080p. And the 90D can produce just amazing video. For the price, what that camera can do in 1080p, if you start with 4K video, is just, it's Canon C100 quality. It's just really, really good. But you're starting with 4K. So you really have to think through a lot of the marketing gimmicks. You have to think through the hype and say, what am I going to get out of this? What is the capability? What is the outcome that I will get from this? Because it's not 4K. It's saving time. Being able to shoot one area, one scene, shoot it wide, but then be able to crop in without losing any value at all doing it in post by shooting it once. And that is very, very significant. So why aren't you guys writing in even something negative? Say this is a terrible video. Say I'm not focusing well, or you should never use webcams. Give me something here. Give me something to work off of. Do you have any questions regarding the rants today, or do you have any rants yourself? What bothers you about the camera market, or what's being available today? Are you shooting with a smartphone? Are you looking at getting a new camera? Now is a really, really good time to buy cameras. Every major camera manufacturer is going to be releasing something very, very special shortly. Nikon tomorrow is supposed to release the D780. They're also going to be releasing their flagship camera, the D6, the follow-up to the D5. That's coming in February, but we could see an announcement at any time. Canon's getting a little silly. They're releasing their 1DX Mark III, and that announcement could come any day as well for a release anytime in January, February, March. But they're also looking at releasing the 5D Mark V, another DSLR. See, they're definitely not dead. Nikon and Canon are both releasing them. I know Nikon and Canon aren't the top of the market anymore, but they still produce some good stuff, and they're still producing DSLRs. Canon is also rumored to release the EOS R Mark II. I think the EOS R Mark II is going to be the mirrorless equivalent to the 5D Mark V, and we're going to see the Mark II first, but I could be wrong. There could also be another update to the EOS R. No, I said that wrong. Another update to the EOS R, or the EOS RF platform. So there could be a total of 4 cameras coming out by Canon. Fujifilm's going to be releasing the X-T4. It's been very, very quiet. There hasn't been a lot of rumors coming out on that camera. And I personally think that the X-T3 has been... I don't know why we don't hear more noise about it. It's a very, very good camera. The focus is pretty good. I think it's very, very, very good at what it can do. Low light, it might have a bit of trouble. The only problem with the X-T3 platform is no in-body image stabilization. And if you don't have that, then you look at the number of lenses that have stabilization, and there's very, very few. So as everyone talks about it, but no one's ever seen it. It's the A7S III. This could be my next camera. My next camera is either going to be something like the A7S III. It could be the Fuji X-T4, but I really think I'm ready for... Yeah, I think I'm ready for a full-frame camera. There's certain capabilities it'll give me that I don't get with an APS-C. So if I'm going to have to get rid of all my lenses, I need a lot of value there. So I think that's why I need to go to the full frame. And what else is there? There's the Panasonic, the GH6. I love the GH5. It's an incredible camera. It doesn't work for me. I do a lot of run and gun, so not having reliable autofocus, it doesn't work for me. Would work for me in the studio here doing YouTube work, but outside of that, it's not very useful, which is too bad. So what I expect, I'll either look at the A7S III, will probably be my next camera, or it could be the EOS R Mark II or the 5D Mark V. I know they're not the best cameras, but Canon's dual pixel autofocus and video is I would say second to none. It's still the best. The color accuracy, I shouldn't say color accuracy. It's no, that's right. It's the word color science I don't like. Color accuracy, I'd say is very good. In post-production, if I shoot outdoors, bring it inside, there's very little editing I have to do. Indoors, I just use one of Peter Gregg's Bright White. It's a little piece of plastic. You hold it up. You can get them free from his YouTube site. You hold them up, and I auto-correct the focus based on that, and that's what I do for my indoor work. But the nice thing is when I'm out shooting outdoors where you've got your subject moving around, you've got lighting changing all the time, the Canon does a really, really good job. And what I tend to do when I'm outdoors, indoors, everything's manual. Outdoors, everything's automatic. And the reason for that is things happen quickly. So I pick up my camera and I turn on and start shooting. If I'm in manual mode, before I can shoot, I have to check what's my shutter at, what's my f-stop, what's my exposure, what's all this stuff. So I don't have a lot of control. And because Canon kind of cripples things a little bit, you've got two modes in Canon when it comes to video. You've got full-on manual mode, and you've got full-on automatic mode. There's no in-between. At least there isn't with the 70D. So that is why I'm kind of sticking to Canon, not because I think they're the best. I think they're one of the most frustrating companies to deal with. They seem to like to cripple everything. In my video I released on the weekend, well, there's 3 of them, but if you take a look at the 101DX Mark III, the specifications were leaked. One of the things in that specification that says it does not do is it does not, you ready for this? Get ready. This is, a lot of other cameras can do this, but if you spend $6,000, $6,500 on a flagship camera from Canon, they're going to say, here's your 4K 60, sir, but yeah, you can't use your autofocus, which is, you know, them protecting their C200 essentially. So now, again, this is a leaked specification. We don't know what this is actually going to look like once it gets in the hands of photographers. So all this stuff I kind of look at is a grain of salt. Is it real? Are they really going to remove or prevent autofocus from working in 1080p, just like they did in the 90D for 120 frames per second? There's no reason they need to do that, but they just thought, we're not giving them that. That's too good of a camera. No. So 1DX Mark III, 4K 60. Yeah, let's just lock the autofocus like we did in the 90D. Why? And this is where I can see Casey from Camera Conspiracies. He's going to do the interview, and he'll go something like this. Well, we're going to give them 4K 60, sir. Well, why do we want to do that? Well, they're asking for it. No, take it away. That's stupid. You don't need 4K 60 with autofocus. They can manually pull the focus. I can see him. He'll do it a lot better than I can right there, but that's what's going to happen. He's going to really just eat Canon for lunch. And I think Casey just released a video. Let me see. What has Casey released recently? Let's go take a look. Camera Conspiracies. Oh, here it is. Oh, I got to watch this. You guys got to watch it too. Canon 1DX Mark III crippled hard. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. You know this is going to be funny. It's 8 minutes. I'm almost tempted to watch it right here because I want to watch this. Hold on. Let's see here. You can tell he's impressed. Look at how impressed he is there. All right. I'm not getting any comments. I want to see if the stream is working properly. I'm going to go back to my main detail screen here and see if I can see if you guys are actually giving me comments or not. Unless you're just, the shy and quiet types. No, that's not what I asked for. YouTube. No, don't give me the live dashboard. I'm already... No, don't. Stop fighting with me. You guys can't see this. I'm on a different window. Let's see here. Everything you have written is... Oh, so here's one from Alan Howat. Well, I agree with you. Everything you have just wrote, and it's true. Most people won't notice the difference in resolution and won't even care. As long as the content and audio is good, and audio is good and interesting. And I think that's one thing Casey does really, really well here. He pans it pretty monotone. He has, let's face it, some boring material to cover. We all do. I mean, we're talking about cameras. This is not exactly exciting stuff. But in this video here, now I've lost a few viewers because they've gone off to watch Casey's video. But this, yeah, Canon 1DX is hit pretty hard by the Canon cripple hammer. No dual pixel autofocus in 4K 60. I was the first to report that in video too. And he's got more videos than me. That's what happens when you have 57,000 subscribers. So no 24 in 1080p, but still destroys the lame Sony A9. He did not like that. He released another video several months ago on the A9, and he didn't like that at all. I won't say I didn't like the A9, but it didn't do anything for me. The A9 didn't impress me much, as Shania Twain once sang in a song. That don't impress me much. These companies want a lot of money for these cameras, and it's really frustrating when we see them crippled in ways that just don't make sense. Now, the 1DX Mark III is not a camera I'm going to go with. For one, it's big. So when I'm doing run and gun work, it's very heavy. That doesn't interest me much. But the 5D, I think would, and stay with me a little bit here. The 1DX Mark II had 4K 60. It had motion JPEG, but they didn't cripple it as much. They didn't take away the autofocus, did they? I don't think they did. Thank you for the comment. All's well. Good. Thank you. I don't think they did. So this is another example of Canon removing features that they gave us before. Look at the... So I'm going to backtrack a bit. Look at the Canon 90D. I have the 70D, and I kid you not here, you can look at the specifications. I had other comments earlier today questioning me, saying, yo, that's not true. So the Canon 90D, 1080p, 30 frames per second was the fastest the fastest frame rate and the highest resolution. The 80D gave us 60 frames a second, so it doubled the frames per second, but we were still at 1080. What was really nice is if you're really trying to produce good content, not for YouTube, so everything mattered, you wanted accurate movement, you want to capture the detail. So if you're shooting mountains, wilderness, you got a stream running through the middle, you want to shoot with the all-eye codec, so you get all the information. Problem with IPB, and Sony calls it something XVSC or something, I can't remember, but IPB is basically where you have one full frame and then the next 2 frames are guessed using algorithms, but they're literally guessed. And then every 3 frames you have a full frame of information. They're usually about 1/3 the size of all-eye. So on the 70D and 80D, we had all-eye. And that's good. I was smart enough to learn how to shoot in all-eye and realized it was okay for me. I was responsible enough. I didn't do anything stupid. I was responsible with my all-eye video. Canon, in its infinite wisdom, with the 90D, decided, no, it's too confusing. We have to take away all eye. And they did. There is no all eye in any video shooting modes in the 90D. Not in 720, not in 1080p, and definitely not in 4K, because that'd be just silly, right? It's gone. Completely gone. Yeah, it is. And of course, they took away 24 frames a second. Now, they did give it back to us, but what a lot of people don't realize is if you do clean HDMI out and you're recording through an external recorder, there's no 24 still. Yep. Yeah, you can set it to 24, but you'll actually get 30p coming out. So on the 1DX Mark III, they're removing autofocus. Now, I don't know if we'll get contrast detect. It doesn't tell us yet, right? We still have to wait. So maybe the camera is not ready to hit yet, but there's no autofocus, they say, in 4K 60. But the 1DX Mark II had 4K 60. How about them apples? We're talking about 4K 60. This is 2020. This is not 2016. 4K 60 is pretty standard today. The Fujifilm APS-C X-T3 has 4K 60. The Panasonic GH5 has 6K anamorphic, let alone 4K 60. I think I wouldn't be surprised if somebody has jerry-rigged a GH5 to run a power generator or to power a car somehow. Those things are packed with everything. The only thing that Panasonic doesn't understand is that contrast detect, or as they call it, depth from defocusing. I mean, it says it right in the name. It's defocusing. It's frustrating. I mean, Panasonic, those guys are producing really, really good stuff. The S1, S1H. I would find a way to afford the S1 if it used some sort of phase detect autofocus. I mean, it's got everything else I'd want in it. And they're not crippling it. They're not trying to cripple the camera. They just believe that for whatever strange and obscure reason that it's okay to have hunting in your autofocus all the time because your video detail is going to be really good. Because what happens is if you pixel peep, you go in far enough and you raise the contrast enough, you can see some banding due to dual pixel autofocus. Okay. So we don't want to duplicate what Canon did because, you know, if people pixel peep, we don't want to see that banding. However, we're perfectly fine if the focus keeps pulsing all the time or locking on the background when the person's taking up a third of the scene. You know, I don't know where that logic is. So Canon's not the only company to cripple. So yeah, after this video, and hit like and subscribe too, but after this video, watch Casey's Camera Conspiracy and watch Tony Northrup's video on 4K and 1080p. Yeah, this is my ranting today. I don't know if I think maybe it's a good idea to start trying to do these every Sunday, but my biggest problem right now is just trying to figure out how to live stream. I'll schedule it, I'll set it up in YouTube, and then using OBS or OBS. I like OBS. It sounds a little more friendly. It sounds like a little, you know, troll from Wizard of Oz or something. With OBS, I'll start streaming, and then it'll open up a completely new stream in YouTube, even though I've set up all my keywords, tags, and everything. So it's as frustrating as it all can be. So there's got to be an easier way of doing it. And this is just a makeshift setup. The reason why I brought down my special, this is a very, very special bush. This is a tropical plant. When I was a kid, I lived in New Zealand, and we used to have a locust tree. And this is what this is. Now, I remember it as being a tree because I was a wee little lad at the time. I think it was just like 20, 30 feet tall. And it produces yellow-orange fruit, or no, yellowish-green fruit. It was so tasty. It was like a citrusy taste. And after about 30 years, I found them in a specialty grocery store. So I bought some, ate them, and I planted the seed. And this is 3 years growth. These things grow really quickly. Upstairs, another fruit tree or bush that I'm trying to grow is a Feijoa tree, also native to New Zealand. I had to order the seeds from Florida. And so in the summer, they're outside. In the winter, I bring them inside. But so far, both plants are flourishing. The Feijoa tree is only about this tall. So the fact that I brought this guy down here is because this is a very special video. This is my rant, my Sunday rant about all the things that are frustrating me. So that's kind of it. We're probably going to wrap up soon because I'm running out of things to rant on. But let's leave it off with a positive note. This week, strap yourself in. Keep an eye on the news releases. Keep an eye on what Nikon's doing. And keep an eye on what Canon's doing. Nikon was the very first to release a development announcement for their flagship camera, the D6. But their development announcement kind of went like this. Hey, we're Nikon. We're working on our D6. You know, the full-frame flagship follow-up to the D5. Stay tuned. We'll let you know. That was Nikon. Canon was like, well, we're working on our flagship camera, so we need to do something too. So Canon had a bunch of committees formed, and they met in a boardroom a couple of times, and about 2 months later, almost 2 months later, so the beginning of September for Nikon, the end of October for Canon decided, okay, let's do our development release. Let's one-up Nikon. And so they announced their development release. And it was detailed. And they had calls and people calling in. 4K 60 10-bit 422 internal RAW recording is just one of the few things they talked about. I was like, wow, this looks really good. But all of us, that's you, everyone, realized, yeah, let's see what actually comes out. What do they cripple? But that was their development announcement. So here we have Nikon going to be releasing announcing the D780 tomorrow. Canon is rumored to be in imminent announcement release. It's a mouthful. Imminent. I can't even say it the second time. Imminent announcement release. So we had the development announcement. Now we're going to have the actual announcement. This could be any day. But both the D6 and the 1DX Mark III aren't due to come out till probably February, March. Who knows? That could change, right? We don't know if the Canon's going to have IBIS or not. We do know that Canon is bringing IBIS to the market. There's been several patents that have come out, and we know that they're planning on bringing IBIS to the M50. So watch those out. Sony has been very quiet. Fuji's been very quiet, and Panasonic have been very quiet. But know that they are planning a release too. And the reason for this, why this matters now, is the Summer Olympics are coming up, and I believe they usually start right around July. So when you're watching the Olympics on TV, what all the camera companies want you to see when you watch is they want you to see Canon on those cameras. They want you to see Nikon, Panasonic, etc. They want their brands out there. So the Olympics is a pretty big deal because this is sports photography at its best. So that's why the flagship cameras have got to be out there. The 1DX Mark III, the D6, they're going to be out there. So they're coming out soon, and they're going to be in people's hands within 3 months, or it's a big screw up. They're going to be in people's hands within about 3 months. But then all these other camera companies, some of them have announced, like you got the Sony A9 II, which is their flagship camera. It's already come out. So what's Sony planning? Well, their big video camera. They're not going to sit down and not release something while all these other camera companies get news releases and press coverage and YouTube coverage, right? Because if you're not out there, if your name isn't out there, then people forget about you. So we're going to see the GH6, the XT4, the A7S III. So the A7S III might get me off Canon because I don't know what they're going to do with video. So if they're already crippling the video, I still can't believe that. They're removing autofocus in 4K 60. I can't say it. I want to say it. I'm going to say it. What a bunch. No, I'm not going to say it. Let Casey say it. I think it's just ridiculous. They're removing autofocus in 4K 60. So what's the 5D Mark V or the EOS equivalent of that going to be? Will it have 4K 60? No, it won't. It'll have 4K 30, and I think that's about as far as they're going to take it. But what are they going to remove? What are they going to take away from us? So how do you make... What is in the EOS R Mark II? 4K was soft in the Mark I. I'm going to call it the Mark I. It's the Mark I. 4K was soft. So they can make it detailed. They can give us... this is funny too. They can give us 120 frames per second in 1080p because, God love them, everybody else has been doing it for like 5 or 6 years. Only Canon thinks you keep it in 720p, or you bump it up to 1080p like they did in the Canon 90D. Woohoo! And what do? They remove autofocus. It's like a spoiled, surly little kid. You know, you punish him, but he's going to get you back. He's going to get you back. We can talk about it on YouTube. We can talk about it in the press, and God love them, but Canon's going to do what Canon wants you to have. They're not going to give you what you want. They're going to give you what they want you to have. And no matter where you go with whatever camera you buy, there's going to be something missing. And it's not that the more you go up in price, you get what you need. No, you move up in price, but then you still have to get this camera. They want you to have a photo camera and a video camera. It doesn't matter if you spend $30,000 on one of their video cameras, you still need a photo camera. It doesn't matter if you spend $10,000 on their photo camera, you still need a video camera. Because they're going to take their cripple hammer and they're going to bash the living daylights out of everything. these cameras are capable. Sony, Panasonic, Fuji, they're like, what do you want? No problem. Yeah, no, we'll give you 2 firmwares updates a month. The only thing I don't like, or not don't like, the one thing that frustrates me about Fuji is it's either APS-C or what's it called? It's past full frame. Large format. They'll give you large format or they'll give you APS-C. It's like, really? How many people actually buy your large format cameras? You know? How about you do full frame and APS-C? And the GH series, Micro Four Thirds is fine. They're doing a really good job with it. They've proven that you don't necessarily have to go to full frame or even APS-C to get really good results. But they have their weak point too. No matter what you tell them, and they're aware of the issue with autofocus, but their view is it's doing fine the way it is. I'll look at the S1H. What a brilliant camera. 6K. Hey, can you go over there, little guy? My son, he's playing. S1H, $6,000 for just the body itself. Just incredible. That thing is, it's amazing. It's just stacked with everything you could possibly want except for autofocus. But to be fair, a lot of professionals say, well, we don't use autofocus as professionals. Well, no. Because you've got zebras, because you've got other capabilities, and because you've got generally people in charge of pulling that. The guy who's filming is not the guy who's pulling focus. But if you want to do run and gun work, you can't do manual focus. You can't have a guy pulling it, or you don't want to afford it. So put it in the camera so we can just have the one guy doing everything. There's a lot of documentaries that you can see on Netflix and YouTube and broadcast television where it's got a single guy with one camera filming everything. What's that series? It was based out of Canada. Departures, 3 seasons. If it's still on Netflix, watch it. Really well done. It had the one guy with a camera. I think a few other times the guys would have their DSLRs and doing stuff, but basically this guy was the one guy with a camera, at least in the first series. One guy, one camera. But they produced really good results. They took the thing up a volcano when the volcano was spewing stuff out and didn't have a problem. So unfortunately, no matter who we turn to, there are going to be some issues. And with Sony, the problem with the Sony is in editing on post, you need to do a little bit more work with the colors, unfortunately. So they're not as accurate. But that's kind of it. I'm going to wrap things up now because no one seems to want to stick around. If you guys have any comments outside of live, drop them. What I tend to do with all of you guys and all my videos, when you guys drop a comment or a question, especially a question, if you've got a question for me, I usually respond within 24 hours. Comments, I don't always respond, but I'll usually give you a like. Unless, of course, you just say something absolutely incoherent. It's just like 2 words and it says cars fast, something like that. But I usually get back to you very quickly. What you can do to help me out, though, is if you like this video or if you like my other content, go ahead and click like. And if you want to receive notifications of new videos that come out, after you click subscribe, click the little bell icon, followed by choosing all, and you'll get notifications of new videos as they come out. So that's it for today. I'm signing out. It's beautiful, tropical outside. I'm going to go and play in the snow. Have a good week, guys. Stay tuned. If there's new announcements, I'll let you guys know through videos. Cheers. Bye-bye.